Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you for the introduction and great event, I must say. Um, in fact, the discussion since the program started has been interesting. Okay, the various areas of ISO implementation has been covered. In fact, the last session on the HRO role in the implementation of the ISO standards actually dovetail to what I'm going to be talking on this particular time. Okay, most of the time there are so many standards, whether it is ISO 9001 quality management system or 22301, which is the business continuity system, or information security, or ISO 31000, which is risk management. There are so many standards. So there's always an issue of people focusing, or organization focusing on documentation instead of building a culture of risk management, building a culture of making informed decisions. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking to us about, that at the end of this session you should take with you as part of your takeaway, how to improve the culture in your organization, so that whatever that culture is, okay, is synchronized throughout the entire system. Okay, so this is a question. Do you prefer a pile of documents or a culture of risk management? Okay, you can just use the chat room to answer that, yes or no. What do you prefer, a culture, a risk culture, or you want to have series of documents in your system? Okay, so as professionals, we are interested in not only having the necessary documents, okay, whether it is documents relating to the standards or policies or procedures or manual, but most importantly, we also want to build a culture in the organization. Now, if you look at most corporate failures, they weren't failures that arose, okay, because they failed to provide the necessary documentation, or they failed to put the necessary policies in place, okay. Most of the corporate failures were due to cultural issues, okay, a culture of taking unplanned risk, a culture of taking unsupervised decisions, a culture that did not actually follow the mission or even the documentation they put in place. So the question is, are we saying having these documents are irrelevant? Okay, so you can also use the chat box. Are you saying these documentations are irrelevant? Okay, now if we look at some of the corporate culture right from history, now this is an historical analysis of different corporate failures or different corporate collapse right from 2020 to some centuries ago. Now, one recent one comes to mind, which is Wirecard, okay, in Germany, as recent as 2020, okay, over 1.9 billion euros was involved in the issue of money that did not exist. I can assure you that Wirecard had all the necessary documents, all the necessary policies, and all those things in place. But the culture was different, okay? It was the culture which they built over time that resulted to that particular scam, okay? We are not going to go through all the different failures. What about the Lehman Brothers? This is a particular case study that everyone in risk management, okay, in audit, they should study. What was significant in Lehman Brothers is that part of the financial crisis of 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009, they were also significant to that global financial crisis. Okay, and for the Lehman Brothers, they actually had internal controls and policy in place, but they were breaching their own internal policies or internal limits. Okay, so you can see that for Lehman Brothers, they also had necessary policies, necessary documentation in place. Okay, however, they were accounting fraud, okay, and off-balance sheet items that were kept and not reported to the regulators. So it was an issue of culture that brought about their collapse. Or was it AIG, okay, AIG insurance, okay? So these are significant examples of corporate failures, whether it is WorldCom or it is Enron, okay? So another one that comes to mind happened in 1494. So to tell you that the issue of corporate failure has always been about the culture of the organization and not about the issue of having the documents in place. You can have all the documentation, you can have everything, but the HRO will tell you that it is important to communicate what these policies should entail in the organization. It is important for the entire employees, okay, both the management, the board, and the entire staff to understand what culture the organization is building. For instance, Medici Bank, as early as 1494, okay, it was owned by the Medici family. It ran up large debts due to family profligate spending lifestyle. So you can see that was a different culture entirely, okay? A culture that arose from excessive spending. So you find that, look at your organization. What is the assessment of your organization, okay? How is your organization managing risk and taking risk? So those are the questions that you need to throw open. So that brings us to talk about what culture is actually, okay? Does it have to do with the board and management alone? Okay, does it have to do with our employees and the critical objective? Or does this relate to everyone? Culture is basically our beliefs and behavior, okay? Corporate culture. What is the corporate culture? What is the belief and the behavior of your organization's employee and management? How do they interact? How do they make business decisions? Okay. Most of the time, corporate culture is not what is expressed in documents. It is implied and it grows organically. You see a culture where there is no sense of urgency. There are some organizations, I'm sure there are some organizations you pull a call across and the response from the receptionist will just put you off, okay? You build to you, that is a defining moment. You build an assessment of that organization by the response you just got from the receptionist. So the culture is usually organic, it grows organically. And before you know what is happening, the entire system is either growing positively or it is growing negatively. Now, there are some cultures that talk about transparency, that talk about self-reporting, self-assessment, okay? So when we focus just on the standards alone, how to document the standards, how to get certification on the standard, without appropriately building the culture, you are going to have a disjoint between your performance, between the reality and the substance of those documentation. So as professionals, what we advocate and recommend is that while you are building your risk management practice, remember the ISO standards are principles. They are not, the ISO standards on risk management in particular, are principles, best practices, and means of making informed decisions. So they are not rules, they are not about having documents or having policies or procedures. It's about embedding risk management in your decision-making process. Okay, when you are making decision to expand, do you have options? When you are making decisions to abandon a project, do you have options? When you are making the decision to grow, to recruit, to hire, okay, to improve your processes, okay, that is where risk management plays a dominant role. Risk management must be embedded in your decision-making process, okay? So it is less of a department and more of an integration. It is integrated in HRO functions. It is integrated in audit functions. It is integrated in management functions. It is integrated in board decisions. It is integrated in operational in operations. So more often than not, what we advocate is building that risk management culture where decisions are made based on informed criteria. They are calculated. You understand the options, okay? You weigh the outcomes, you weigh the consequences. So the ISO 31000, okay, is giving us principles for us to build our operations on, for us to define and design our vision and mission statement. So it is not about the number of policies you have in the system, but it's about building a culture of risk-taking, a culture of risk management, a culture that works or focuses on making calculated and informed decisions. Now, Patty McCord, the Chief Talent Officer of Netflix, said, over the years, we learned that if we ask people to rely on logic and common sense instead of formal policies, most of the time we will get better results and at lower cost. This is coming from Netflix, okay? So when we build a culture, there is a correlation that the performance will increase over time. There is always a relationship between the type of culture the organization showcases and also the performance of the organization. So every one of those industries, every one of those sectors, one of those organizations that has collapsed, they didn't collapse for failing to have policy documents in place or failure to have standard in place, but most of them collapsed because they had a culture, okay, that did not support the mission and vision statement. They had a culture of breaching their own internal policies or internal control. They had a culture that failed to create authorization levels. They had a culture that failed to segregate duties. They had a culture that failed to optimize employee engagement. So it's about building your culture and not building policies. So this discussion emphasizes that if you are building your culture, okay, it must be a vision that everyone understands. A great culture starts with the vision and mission statement. And this has been emphasized during the discussion. So the vision of your organization is what everyone in the system should have a buy-in into, should understand, and should incorporate in whatever they are doing. Okay, outside the vision, another significant part of the culture should be your values. What does your company value? Do you value honesty? Do you value transparency? Okay, do you value employee engagement? Do you value making calculated decisions? Okay, then what do you practice? You can have the vision and the value, but your practice is different from those values. Okay, like the Lehman Brothers, they had the visions and the value. They were one of the 5 largest investment banking in the United States. But what they were practicing was different from their visions and their values. So practice, what do you practice? Your value must be shown in your practice. Then you talk about the people, okay? Building a culture involves training the people, letting them out, these are the core of the organization, okay? Participating in this conference will definitely enhance skill competency, and so that when you go back to your organization, you are focused on how to engage and build a culture, okay, that is responsive, that has values, and that practices those values. Okay, so the narrative and the place, every organization has a narrative. What would be the narrative of your organization? What would be the narrative? That you are an ethical and corporate responsible entity. So these are some of the elements that make up the culture of the organization. So once more, I would like to reiterate this. The ISO 31000 about having policy documentation in place. It's not about having manuals. It's about building a culture of risk management. And what does risk management entail? Risk management enables you to make informed decisions. Whether you are risk averse, or you are a risk seeker, or you are a risk neutral. Risk management enables you to make decisions that support your mission, your vision, and your values. And for you to have a mature risk management, then the culture of your organization, what you value, what you practice, your people, okay, the narrative and the place, okay, must be in sync, must be synchronized, must fall in line with the principles of risk management. So I will wrap up by saying, every organization that is standing and that has stood the test of time, that has survived decades and centuries, they are doing so because they have a culture that speaks better than documentation. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and that is my presentation. Question and answer, back to the moderator, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Monday. What a beautiful presentation, and what a beautiful way of summarizing that culture speaks better than documentation, showing us all examples of corporate culture collapse and explaining that culture is like making decisions to support the vision and mission and values of a company. I'll just see I have everyone appreciating you rather than any questions coming in. So we are all, everyone wants to just appreciate, and they're finding it pretty informative. So Monday, with this, we move ahead to our next speaker, and I would like to thank you with a virtual round of applause for such a beautiful presentation, such a lovely topic on culture. Madhuji, do you have a question now?
Hello.
Yes, Madhuji.
May I ask one question?
Yes, please.
Very
please,
quickly.
Please go ahead.
It was really good to hear you, Monday, and virtually we are connected, but I am just seeing you also and very eagerly willing to answer some questions. So I thought I'll just be the villain again to ask some question. In your presentation, we are talking about the culture versus documentation. And since you being the chief risk officer and then handling the risk, various factors of risk. So
Madhuji, we lost your voice, so we haven't got the question.
Elisa, I think again there is an internet.
Yeah, I think please carry on. I think am I audible now?
You are audible. If you have the question, then we'll quickly.
Yeah. Very quick question. Very quick question
Yes.
to Monday. Since we focused on risk management, the culture, and the documentation in your presentation, so what do you think is the better word, or maybe the better terminology in the current scenario? The risk management or the risk mitigation? One is theoretical, one is the practical solution. So which one you feel is a better one too?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Okay, if I got you clear, you are asking between risk management and risk mitigation, which is the better one? Is that your question?
Yeah, that is the question. One is theory, that is risk management.
Okay.
One is the practical solution,
All
that is
right.
risk mitigation. So what do you think is appropriate in
Okay.
current scenario which is going on?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Okay, risk mitigation is a subset of risk management. Risk management is both a discipline and also a management function. Okay, so when we are talking about risk treatment or managing your risk, one of the cycle of managing your risk is to apply risk mitigation. So the entire risk management process does not only involve risk mitigation, it also involves the process of plan of risk assessment, risk analysis, risk evaluation, monitoring and controlling the risk. So part of the risk management process is where we have the risk mitigation, which actually involves you making risk responses to the risk you have identified in your organization. Okay, so risk mitigation is a subset of the risk management process. Okay, I hope that briefly answers your question. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Over to you, Elijah.
Thank you so much, Madhuji,
Thank
for
you.
such a wonderful question. And thank you, Monday, for explaining it in such a nice way that risk mitigation is a subset of risk management. And again, a virtual round of applause for you, and appreciate the time that you have taken out and logged in, whatever the time of the day is at your place. And with this, we